Hi everyone, I'm Julia and this is Julia at Home. It's been a couple weeks because I have been snuggling with this little one, and today I just wanted to do a quick introduction video of her and do a really short kind of birth story. So this, I'm going to call her Baby G. I tend not to share my kids' names on this channel or my blog, so I just call them by their first letters of their first names. So Baby G was born on her due date or guest date of June 9th, which I was not expecting. It's the last day I thought she'd be born actually on her guest date. But she was at 11 o'clock at night. I used hypnobabies, probably not fully in the way it's intended to be used. I did not have it on the whole time. But I used the affirmations throughout pregnancy and the other tracks as well. I really enjoyed visualizing your birth, and I have to say, all the things that I visualized prior to her being born, I got to do during my birthing time. So it was a really special time. So I didn't vlog it. I didn't take any video, but I do have some pictures. So as I talk, I'll try to intersperse them in here, mainly from early in my birthing time, and then after she was born. I wasn't focusing on getting pictures during the active labor and pushing and all that. So that's what you get. About a couple weeks prior to her birth, actually, I was having practice or warm up pressure waves. A couple times I thought it might actually be a birthing time and call my midwife, and it wasn't. But it was pretty tiring. They were at random times and for random lengths of time, and it was just, I was tired. I also had a lot of pelvic pain. In the last weeks of pregnancy, she was really low. Her head was really low, and so when I was standing and walking, it was painful. So I was tired. I was ready. I thought she was going to come early, but she came exactly on her guest date. So on that day, it was a Sunday, June 9th, we had a good family day, just kind of hanging out at home. I didn't want to go too many places because one, I wasn't feeling great, and two, I was expecting her to come at any time. And I lay down to rest around 6 o'clock in the evening. I was just laying on my side watching some TV on my laptop, and I started to notice, hey, these pressure waves are feeling a little stronger than they have been, and they were getting a little more consistent. And so I kind of kept resting for a while, because often, after resting for a while, I would go to sleep and they'd go away. But they didn't. So I ended up calling my midwife and said, I think this may be it. And I said, I'm going to, we talked, we decided I was going to take a shower and see if that kind of slowed them down at all or anything. And she was actually going to get her stuff together and maybe even start on her way, just in case, because with my son, my second, his birthing time was 5 hours from start to finish, and she was about an hour and a half away from me, so we wanted to make sure that she got here in time. So she came on her way, but she didn't call any of the support people. We had a backup midwife as well as a student midwife coming, so it was just her at that point. At this time, my husband was putting the other two kids to bed, so it worked out that while he was doing that, I hopped in the shower. I took a nice long hot shower, and the pressure waves kept coming. I was doing hip circles. We have a little bench in our shower, so I would put my hands on that and lean forward. That seemed to feel best during the pressure waves, and they were definitely feeling a lot more intense than the practice waves. And so that made me feel more confident that, yes, this was time. So when I got out of the shower, I checked in with my husband. Luckily, both the other kids went to sleep really easily that night, which is not always the case. And I had him just time a couple waves to see how far apart they were coming. I think they were about 7 minutes apart at that point. So I gave my midwife a call back and said, I'm pretty sure this is it. This is where we are. She's like, cool, I'm on my way. I will call everyone else. So after I got out of the shower and had called the midwives and talked to them, My husband and I got to walk outside, which is something I really had wanted to do. It was gorgeous out. The sun was just starting to set. The flowers had just started blooming. I actually have some video and some pictures I took of the flowers out there. We walked up and down the driveway a bit and out into the garden, which was and is a mess, but I was able to pick some radishes, which was kind of exciting, and just check everything out. Every time a pressure wave came, I'd have to stop, and I'd usually lean on my husband and do some hip circles. They were definitely intense. All of my birthing times, I've had very intense pressure waves pretty much the whole time. And at this point, we were timing the pressure waves. My husband was, and they were coming between every 3 and 9 minutes. So it was not super consistent, but that's just how it was. After our walk, we came in and just started cleaning up the kitchen a little bit. I had really wanted everything to be like neat and clean for my birthing time, and it was actually not bad. We had been working on keeping things picked up, and while I was finishing up my shower and getting ready and everything, my husband had been doing a couple cleaning things. So I got together, started steeping some herbs for a sitz bath. I ended up putting it in my peri bottle, but I didn't end up using it as a bath. I meant to. But anyway, I started steeping that because it takes several hours and I didn't know when I would want to use it. And we got our cookies out of the freezer and in the oven. We had enough for several batches, so while I was in the early birthing time, my husband experimented a little bit to get the perfect amount of time and temperature, because it wasn't exactly to his liking the first time. And around that time, after we were in the kitchen for maybe about 5-10 minutes, our student midwife got there, and shortly after, our main midwife that we work with got there. The student actually got there first because our main midwife got caught behind an accident, but it turned out perfectly fine. And then shortly after, our backup midwife arrived as well. So we all... my pressure waves were pretty intense, but they weren't super close together. They were probably still like 3 to 7 minutes apart. And I was really excited to meet the baby and everything. And so I didn't really, I turned on the birthing time affirmations, but I wasn't really ready to just lie down. So I brought my ball into the living room and kind of sat and rolled, did circles on that. And then, I definitely turned my switch to center and or off. Really was center mostly. During pressure waves, really went inside and breathed and sent the hypno anesthesia as best I could. During my pressure waves, and then in between them, I was chatting and just happy to kind of be sharing that time with everybody. I had my water and my red raspberry leaf tea. I wasn't particularly hungry, but I made sure to keep drinking to stay hydrated. And then after they were here for, I'm not really sure, maybe an hour or two, the pressure waves started feeling even more intense, and we're getting closer to feeling like they were a lot closer together. At that time, we weren't really timing anymore. And so I just decided that it was time to kind of go even more like internal and inside, and I moved to the bedroom. I lay down. I went to the bathroom to make sure that wasn't causing extra discomfort. I was kind of hoping my water would break like it did on the toilet with my son, but that didn't happen. And so I was just lying on my side, working through, like listening to, I tried turning on the early birthing time track, and I just was having a lot of trouble focusing on it. Some of the words were distracting. I have to be honest. She kept saying that my pressure waves felt like a nice hug, And at that point, they were just so intense that that kind of bothered me. I like laughed and I ended up kind of yelling at the truck. So I, sorry, all the hypnobabies moms out there and hypnobabies. I do like the program, but I just got annoyed at that track. So I ended up turning the birthing time affirmations back on. I really like the affirmations. They work really well for me. I turned that back on. And I was listening to those as I was, working through what I'm pretty sure was, they call it transformation. Honestly, I have no problem with the word transition. I don't think I don't have any negative connotations associated with it. It's what it is. You're transitioning from your early birthing time into the, you're finishing dilation, effacement, and getting ready to push the baby out. So, um, I my when I'm in transition, my legs shake really bad. So I had my husband just kind of like pushing down on my legs. Um, and at some point, I'm not really sure how long all this was taking, but at some point, my water did break. Um, and I felt like I couldn't, I think it was after, I felt like I couldn't really lay down anymore. I couldn't be still. I had to move my body and be more upright. So I think I went to the bathroom again. And when I got back to the bed before I had laid down, um, my water had broke. So I, or might have broken. I went to the bathroom. Honestly, I'm not sure exactly the timing on that. Um, but I spent time leaning, like facing forward, leaning against the bed, doing, just kind of moving my hips during the pressure waves, which were pretty much constant and on top of each other at that point. I asked my midwives, we hadn't had any checks at this point, which honestly is how I prefer it. Um, and so I said, if I feel like pushing, can I go ahead and push? And they said, yeah. So I started to feel that and I started to push. Um, and um, at some point moved onto the bed on my hands and knees, just because my legs were shaking so bad that felt somewhat more stable. Um, I have to, like, honestly, it's a very uncomfortable, and uncomfortable is like a mild word for it, feeling. Um, it's overwhelming. It's an overwhelming feeling. Um, and uh, I I did at some point. I asked, I was like, can you see her? Because I was afraid that I was doing this pushing and it wasn't doing anything. But in fact, it was. Her head was partly out, actually, at that point already. And so I was able to reach down and feel her really soft head. And that was really helpful. That was really encouraging for me. I kept saying to myself, I can do this. I can do this. I was actually saying it out loud. Um, and the student midwife and my midwife were right there and encouraging me to kind of go slowly. So in between urges to push, I would try to take a couple breaths. But it's a lot of, it's very, very, very intense. And I'm going to say it's painful. It is. Um, and so I had to kind of fight I just kind of wanted to get her out as fast as possible to get through that, because the only way to be done is to go through, right? But also knowing that I wanted to do this safely for both me and her. So I did try to slow down, take a couple breaths in between pushes. I don't know how many pushes or how long it was, but it wasn't a super long time. So um, she came out. She was perfect. They were able to put her, I pulled her up and turned and was able to, check her out. They did, they come over, they do an initial check, making sure she's, breathing and everything in that way looks good. And then they kind of just let us hold her and be for an hour or so before they do any other of the exams. Um, of course, you have the part of pushing out the placenta, so we waited and did that. Um, my husband got me some cookies because I didn't want to eat during birthing time, but then I was hungry. And my midwives also encouraged me to have something a little healthier, something with protein. So I ended up having a little bit of cheese, just because I wasn't feeling like I wanted a lot of things. Um, and yeah, that's how she was born. They then did we got to bond for a little bit. My son, she was born at about a little after 11:09 in the evening. My son has a tendency to wake up and come get his dad in the middle of the night several times. We'll have to go tuck him back in because when he wakes up, he doesn't just go back to sleep. He has to get someone. So he actually came in maybe half an hour after she was born, which was actually fine timing. He came in and all these people were here and the baby was here and he was still half asleep and it was a little funny. But so since he was up, I told my husband to go also wake up my daughter, and they came in and they met the baby. I was able to get cleaned up a little bit, and they both the kids and helped my husband cut the cord. So that was really special. And yep, then I kind of got myself together while my husband held the baby, and the kids kind of just enjoyed watching the baby. We didn't try to put them to bed until later because it was just or back to bed until later because it was too exciting. So they stayed for the newborn exam. She was 8 pounds 5 ounces, which is actually my smallest baby so far. My other two were 8'8" and 8'10", and was 20 and a quarter inches long, which was also she was also the shortest. I think the other two were both 21 inches. Okay. And everything was good. We had our home birth here in Vermont. It's our first birth in Vermont. Our other two, we had a hospital birth and a home birth in Maryland. And I have to say, I was really excited about some of the things here. The state gives the midwives now pulse ox machines, so they're able to test the oxygen level of the baby right there. So they do that as part of the newborn exam. They do the hand and foot, just like they would. It's just like they would do at the hospital. Make sure it's all good. They do most of the things that you would do there, and you have the option of doing the eye ointment, the vitamin K shot, all that. We did do the vitamin K shot. We didn't do the eye ointment, and that is because it is solely for chlamydia and gonorrhea. And I was pretty confident I didn't have either of those anyway, but I also got tested during pregnancy just to double check. And so because that was negative, we went ahead and declined the eye ointment. And if you have questions about these things, be respectful, but please feel free to ask questions. There's a lot of research being done on what is evidence-based in births, and sometimes hospital policies are policies to just kind of cover everyone, and they're not all necessarily evidence-based. So that is something you can look into. There's some I will link evidence-based birth below that you can. It's a website where she goes into researching a lot of these things. So you can check that out to learn a little bit more. We also do things like delayed cord cutting. So we waited until the umbilical cord was done pulsing. She got all the blood from it and the placenta that she was going to get before cutting the cord. And again, we had a home birth. So these are things that are, I think, a little more common and just easier to work through in home births than in a hospital birth. Yes, and then so they stayed for a couple hours after the birth. They did the exam. They made sure I was all good. It gave me instructions for taking some ibuprofen. I just took some Advil, and I also have a tincture. I use the After Ease tincture as well for the after pains. It's the uterus shrinking back down. Gave me instructions on what to look for and when to call them for either me or the baby. And then they came back 2 days later to check on us again. And I believe the 1 week they came back again. It actually might have come back again in between there too. I think they came 3 times. So I can't remember exactly what days, but they came back several times. She's 2.5 weeks now, so we did go to the office for her 2 week appointment. And she has gained back more than her birth weight, so that's really exciting. Often babies lose around 10% of their birth weights after a couple days. The low point's usually around 3 days because that mother's milk often comes in around day 4 or 5. Yeah, so I was a little nervous about that because I've had issues with feeding before. But she was doing great, and she ended up gaining back, and a little bit after 2 weeks was at 8 pounds 11 ounces. So I was really excited about that. This has actually been the smoothest. I should say birth again was about 5 hours, so it was a very similar pattern to my son's, so that was great. That's, I think, a great length of time, to be honest. I wouldn't want it to be much faster than that, and it's definitely a huge improvement over the 36 hours that my first daughter's was. But this has definitely been the smoothest postpartum period I've had. I have felt well supported from my midwives and my husband. We've had plenty of food. I stocked up on a lot of food. And feeding has been going well. I mean, it's always exhausting. I am breastfeeding, and I also use a lactate to supplement a little bit. With a little bit of formula, and I pump and supplement with the extra breast milk that I pump as well. This is probably a topic for another video, but I'm just going to quickly mention I have had, I have insufficient glandular tissue, something I discovered I had when I had my first daughter, and I was totally unprepared. I did a lot of research when she was a baby, and so was a lot more prepared with my son, my second, and each time I end up making more glandular tissue, so I end up making more milk with each baby. So I've had to supplement a lot less for her than I have the other two, and it's just been feeling a lot more natural. So that is Baby G's birth story, a little introduction. Oh, are you gonna say hi? And go back to sleep. Okay. I will be working on some more videos. I am still working on our homeschool planning. I'm kind of in the middle of a bunch of different things right now, and I got to start actually finishing things. But it is almost July, and we are going to start school in August, so there is quite a bit of work to be done. I, of course, am spending a lot of time feeding the baby and caring for the baby. Hopefully we'll be getting back into some sort of rhythm soon, at least while she's napping. I want the kids to be reading and doing a few things. But yes, are you waking up a little bit? You want to say hi? So hopefully I'll have some videos up on the planning process and what we're doing this summer. I think July and August, hopefully you'll see a lot more homeschooling content, and then also hopefully I'll get back out to the garden and show you what's going on out there. It's honestly a mess and a little bit behind. But this is my priority right now, and I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will talk to you later.